Would you watch a show where a billionaire CEO has to go an entire month on their lowest paid employee's salary, without access to any other resources than that of the employee? What do you think would happen? They'd be fine. The problem with poverty is not usually day-to-day costs. People can adjust to that. It's unexpected expenses that are crippling. I doubt a month is enough to really feel the effect. It would be incredibly self-serving and boring. They would never truly experience what it is like to be in the precarious position of a minimum wage employee living hand-to-mouth, and the novelty is just salt in the wound. It would be more interesting to see the reverse. I love reality shows, so I'd watch it depending on who produces it. If it's too fake, with too many emotional moments, advertising, and people shouting, I'm out. It's more than just the money. It's the lack of security these people endure. Not knowing if you'll lose your job tomorrow and having no savings. Being kicked out of your home. An unexpected bill you can't afford, which may lead to increasing debt. Putting these rich people in a poor lifestyle for a month isn't enough. Even if they lost their money and homes, they'll have such a huge network that they'll be back on their feet in the time it takes for us peons to earn enough to eat for a week. They can never truly understand what it's like to be poor or ever face that reality again. So what would happen? It'd be a completely self-serving advert about how now I realize that we need to do more for our employees. The workers get a small vanity bonus, probably give an immigrant worker with limited English a car, pat themselves on the back. Then 2 weeks later, we've all forgotten about the show and they'll go back to their old ways. 3 months minimum and I'd watch it. Thanks for the gold. Isn't this almost the same as Secret Millionaire? Do you guys have that in the US? Sure. They would never do that though, because then they would have to admit that they don't pay a living wage. I'd do more than a month and without any contact to rich buddies either. If it's a month, I think a lot would just buy rice and beans every day and go see. It's super easy to be poor. You just need to make economical choices. I've proven myself right. Longer than that and they'll really have to get used to how their lowest paid employees live. Would they learn a lesson? Maybe. Likely not. They still have a mansion to come back home to. They'll give their lowest paid people a one-time bonus, or maybe they'll drag one out in front of a camera to give them a fancy car so their own reputation gets better. And then they won't change anything else. Lots of rich people voluntarily go on vacation to third world countries. The catch is, they know they have a way out and an end date. I'd be interested to watch a show where the CEO had to personally be financially responsible for the welfare of 50% of their lowest paid employees for 10 years, and their net growth percentage equaled their bonus every year, with a big bonus if both the company and the employees were profitable at the end. It would be better if they had to live with their lowest salaried employee for a month or two, in their house, dinner with the family, travel to and from work together, same lunch, kids with homework, the works. Building that relation would do much more for this problem than just experiencing below your normal standard of living before returning to it. You're more likely to feel empathy for a family you know, and much less likely to forget them. Anything else would just be another show about wealthy people having a fun adventure to talk about at cocktail parties. No. Slumming is not living your entire life in a slum. Here is what will happen. Fake billionaires like Trump will come to this show. Real billionaires will probably not. Those who appear on this show will brag about how they are self-made and their employees could make do with even less. We will find out, like Naked and Afraid, that outside of cameras these billionaires were living in their luxury RVs, sipping martinis, and having affairs. 1 month isn't long enough because no rent is due, etc. There was an episode of American Dad where they tried to live on minimum wage for a month. It was fantastic. They would just treat it as a novelty since they know they will be getting their billions back at the end of the month. They wouldn't have to truly live like a person does who lives hand to mouth every day of their lives. They wouldn't really learn anything from it. In fact, they would probably look back on it and laugh, "Oh, remember when we had to eat that can of ravioli, ha ha ha." You should watch Undercover Billionaire on Discovery, not to be confused with Undercover Boss. Billionaire Glenn Stearns moves to Erie, PA with just $100, a truck, and no contacts, and has to make a company valued at $1 million in 90 days. He also can't mention who he is to anyone. It's pretty much exactly like you are describing, and insanely entertaining. They would have to swap everything down to the last detail. Apartment, car, if they even have one, wardrobe, food, hobbies, etc. And it would have to be ongoing, not just a couple months. The real question is, how to get a CEO to agree to this. Depends if he is self-made or not. Self-made rich people often know very well what it means to be poor, and that's why they work so hard to not be. Only if they also put a low-level employee in the CEO's position to highlight that it's not all golf games and getting other people to do your work. It is a mix. Day to day you can realistically only spend 5 to 10 out of pocket that even a minimum wage worker can deal with. But prorate in the monthly costs, and it gets crazy. In my area, a one-bedroom in a bad area is still $1,200 per month, or about $40 a day. Transit for most people will be at least $5, and that is cost of mass transit to and from work, more if you drive, car, insurance, upkeep, gas. Not having a car is not always an option. On 40 hours at $10 an hour, you are bringing in about $1,200 a month. You lose some of that to taxes, but let's be nice and say you get it all. You already cannot afford a studio apartment, so you need a roommate. So you have to hopefully find someone sane, but that is not a given. So basically, on your own, on a full-time minimum wage job, you basically are eating garbage to just not be hungry. Living with 2 to 3 roommates with the same problems you have, and will have no ability to save enough to ever make a difference. $500 is huge savings over a whole year for you, and that is not life-changing at all. I recently found out the hard way that an ambulance ride is $2,500. For real. I remember times when I would have to choose between going to a dentist with tooth pain and buying new tires for my own safety. Tough choice. But I can see how it would be even harder for someone to choose, say, between eating that day and paying for their kids' school supplies. And a camera team changes everything. I won't trust doing business with a random nobody, but a guy in suit with a whole production team following him. That's a different story. That's why reality shows are intrinsically just shows. But it is just enough time to go. This is stressful. I'm gonna plan a trip to Bali in 26 days from now. It should be open-ended. They should lose their billions of dollars and be forced to work like the rest of us, and the surprise ending is that they die because of lack of health care after backbreaking work for 50 years of their lives. I think they'd have to inject some kind of emergency expense to feel it in such a short time. Like the oven broke or surprise medical bill, to show how a small thing can wipe your entire paycheck. Then force them to miss a day of work for said emergency. Almost like in Monopoly, you pull a card and bam, paycheck is gone. It might add appeal too for watchers since it introduces drama. Why not both? Or trading places, as we called it back in the 80s. The reverse is called the lottery, and we know how it usually plays out. X Factor singer: I can't sing, but my granny died an hour ago and told me to follow my dream. Hosts: you son of a bitch, I'm in. I fucking hate that emotional moment bullshit. Kitchen Nightmares and Bar Rescue used to be great, now I can't even watch them. Same with Undercover Boss. That is the biggest difference between UK and US shows. I love reality shows. If it's too fake, with too many emotional moments, advertising, and people shouting, I'm out. Are there reality shows that aren't like this? Yeah, if it's obviously fake, that's a big no-no. Another issue I have with scripted reality TV shows is that, before each commercial break, they basically sum up the plot progression for the part that follows after the commercial break, then there's 2 commercials, then they sum up the part prior to the commercial break, and then they show the part they have summed up less than 5 minutes ago. If it's too fake, with too many emotional moments, advertising, and people shouting, I'm out. It doesn't sound like you love reality shows, winky face. I hate it when they put in emotional music. Hate it because it actually works, despite best efforts to not get emotional. If Will Smith is in it, I'm out also. What's the show? And are there ways to find it online? He's the head of Amazon. Hi, I'm Jeff Bezos. She's a low-level greeter at Walmart. Have a great day. Put them together in the same apartment. Jeff, we're out of toilet paper, go to Dollar General and grab some. How much can that cost? Like $10,000 a roll. Coming this season to ABC, Perfectly Unbalanced. Starring Elon Musk as the next-door neighbor. Elon, Jeff, have you ever wanted to go to space? Jeff, if I did, the ship would look like my dick. Canned laughter. I wish they had done these shows in the US, say, 10 to 15 years ago. Entertainment media can get away with a little more here, and Undercover Boss was popular enough. I think the audience would be satisfactory to whichever network it landed on. It might have pushed things forward a little bit more. Or not, maybe. What's the name of that show? I want to watch it. I think I know what show you're talking about. My aunt and youngest cousin from Hong Kong were on it, or at least a very similar reality show. They aren't billionaires, but they are very wealthy. They lived with a poor mother and daughter. My cousin is now interested in filmmaking, and I wonder if it's partly due to this show. One thing that stayed with me from the show was that they tried to play up their wealth by saying my cousin had an American tutor. But it was actually my mom helping my cousin over Skype figure out classes for when she'd apply for American high school. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend The Act of Killing. It's a documentary following an elderly man who was once a member of an government-sanctioned anti-communist death squad in Indonesia. Now, the commies are defeated, he's celebrated in his own country. There's a scene where they had him do a mock-up of a torture/execution method he had used. He asked production to hold because he found it traumatic. In a very raw moment, he asks the question, is this what my victims were feeling in their last moments? The producer responds, no, what your victims were feeling was much worse, because you were able to ask us to stop, and they knew there was no escape. You can see in a couple of seconds it changes the guy's whole worldview. I would imagine a billionaire who has been rich for most or all of their adult life, equally, would have trouble conceiving of the dread of inescapable poverty. Your entire last paragraph is every episode of Undercover Boss. Exactly this. The CEO would just think, once I get through this 4 weeks I'm back to normal, when in reality people don't have this. They wouldn't know what it would be like to be in that person's shoes for an extended period of time, not knowing when it's gonna end. You raise a really good point. The producers should fire the CEO halfway through the show and let them try to figure what the hell they should do. That's the theme of the song Common People by Pulp. Shockingly, Shatner does a great version of it with Ben Folds. https://udo.be/anik6fxq0. It's more than just the money. It's the lack of security these people endure. Yeah, for this to work they should sign them up for a month of real life and at the end tell them there was a paperwork mistake or their firm likes it better that way, so they're not getting their old life back. Then the actual show begins. With problem scenarios thrown in. Asterisk broken down car. Asterisk tube strike. Asterisk dodgy boiler. Asterisk sick child. The wheels would come off pretty quickly. Sure, I had to resort to being a homeless cannibal for 10 weeks, but it really wasn't that bad. And they can't choose February as one of their months. Although I'd like to see them have December so they have to deal with Christmas. Exactly. It's not the same thing. They would be doing it for other motives. And their image. They could easily do a month for good publicity. Still too short a time to make these multimillionaires realize the reality of living on minimum wage. 1 year might do it, though. And they have to do the same job as the employee. 1 month is definitely too short. Make it a year-long season. Make them choose between paying rent, fixing the surprise car problem, or living off ramen for a whole month. Yeah, a slightly different premise though, as Op's suggestion is for the salary to be what the person pays their employees, to encourage some awareness of their livelihood, I guess, rather than the minimum wage of the country. There was a TV show in the US where a billionaire was given an old pickup truck and $100 and then had to build a business worth $1 million in 90 days with no access to any resources, besides the pickup truck and the $100. It was really interesting. Nah, all they have to do is stick it out for a month and then they can say from personal experience that it isn't that bad. Of course, they never have to deal with the effects in the long term. It's kind of like when privileged college students pretend to be homeless by camping out in the quad for a night. Some CEOs are such sociopathic cyborgs that they just sit there starving half to death and not let on that it sucks for the whole show just to say that it isn't that bad. So basically undercover boss. Exactly. I remember a few years ago celebrities were basically doing what Op suggested, living on impoverished wages for a month, and there was so much faux understanding of what it's like to be poor, but this misses one of the biggest problems, the soul-crushing hopelessness that there is no way out. Sure, they can only afford beans all month, but after 30 days, they get to go back to expertly prepared meals without any money woes. Not to mention the eventual health issues that arise from not being able to afford balanced meals, and now you can't afford a doctor. I like this idea of taking responsibility and having to end someone else's financial issues. This is the film I want to see. Sort of like a Schindler's List about the casualties of unregulated capitalism. Explore their limitations and possible winning scenarios. To your last point, that's why I like the idea of a wager. Either he pulls it off legitimately without cheating, or he pays a penalty to the employee or employees, such as his bonus is distributed amongst the company. Indeed, 1 year more be more fitting. 1 month is nothing. Stan ended up being a drug addict in 3 days, right? They would treat it like going on safari. Yeah. All you need is a $500 Crown Victoria, sacrifice some living space, and buy cheaper food, but otherwise it wouldn't be that tough. Yup. This is it. They would also have to be allowed to make different decisions on the starting conditions. You're not proving anything by dropping a CEO in the position of a minimum wage worker who is underwater on their car payments and behind on rent and watching them struggle, if the CEO would have chosen a different car and smaller apartment. Then when the company goes belly up, they get to tell all the employees they no longer have a job. Many people seem to picture them like idiots with a silver spoon, but a good chunk were raised in normal middle-class families. People like Warren Buffett or Bezos would fare better than they think. But that's Reddit, where everyone rich is a tool who got there by luck and everyone poor suffered and got it hard and it's not their fault. My experience is that this is a false dichotomy. Children of billionaires thrown into this situation would likely make for a more interesting show. Yeah, I'm really feeling this here. The average studio here is around $1,200, so I live an hour and a half out of the city and commute 3 to 6 hours a day for slightly above minimum wage. Hardly anyone is hiring locally, that's why it's so much cheaper out here. Couldn't go to school for ages and ages because it was impossible to gather the money for tuition and living expenses while I was treading water. And on top of that there are the physical and mental effects of chronic malnourishment, poor water quality, terrible insulation in -30 weather, and so on. I managed to break the cycle when my province increased minimum wage to 14/HR and instituted free tuition with loans available for living expenses. Literally saved my life. It's not realistic to expect people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Yep. It would need to be hidden camera and such. Well, that and the scripted and edited parts. Nathan For You really demonstrates the effect being on TV has on people. People agree to some outlandish shit for their business just because he's on a TV show. Watch Rich House/Poor House on YouTube. The UK already has a show exactly like this. Here we have Elliot. Elliot is a Down syndrome paraplegic who got disfigured when his plane crashed on the way to his dream vacation. He spent the next 4 months in a medically induced coma while the doctors found a replacement for his dick that got torn off. Also, he can sing moderately good. Here he is. Judges. Gimme that golden buzzer. This is why I can't watch many car shows anymore. Before commercial. If we don't get this engine to run, we're going to lose the shop. After commercial. After 6 seconds, Tommy found that the coil wire had popped off. We put it back on and the car runs great. And #X200B. Now I just watch the Motor Trend originals like Roadkill, Roadkill Garage, Dirt Every Day, and Faster with Finnegan. They don't do that fake TV drama bullshit. Edit, since a few others have pointed this out, YouTube has some great content. Personally, I enjoy Smoking Tire, Doug DeMuro, Cletus, Rob Pitts, Ed Balian, and a few others. Have you ever watched the British Kitchen Nightmares? He goes in, teaches them how to improve their food, teaches them how to manage a business, then does a bit of advertising. And #X200B. He is a lot meaner to us than the Americans. Undercover Boss is one of the worst blatantly scripted shows I've ever seen. But the music tells me how to feel. There is not a single thread of emotions in any such scene. Literally just hate all the drama to garner attention and drive huge no of viewers. Shark Tank. Everyone fucking cries now. If you cried in the first few seasons they would laugh you out of the room. Now they talk about crying shows passion. Blah. Anything they invest in takes off. It's a free 20 minutes prime time infomercial on a major network. Undercover Boss was my guilty pleasure, but then they went and forced the emotional side, and spoiled it completely. Bar Rescue has always been so fake. I don't know how people believe these shows when the hidden cameras are so obvious. Not only that, but that guy is so obnoxious. I could tell from the first 5 minutes it was fake. Yeah, that shit is so typical American producers, lol. It's like those viral videos, instead of just straight away showing it to people, some American person has to talk about it for twice as long as the length of the video. Don't get me wrong, my fiancé is American and nothing against someone just because of where they're from, it's just the way American TV has developed, and that's the part that makes me cringe, lol. Undercover Boss is some of the worst propaganda on TV. https://tv.av club.com/happy-1/0th-undercover-boss-the-18412784785. I noticed this watching Kitchen Nightmares UK. In the UK version, it seems like Gordon really is trying to help people. Intense moments are for passion. The US version is cut with dramatic music, and I can't watch it anymore.
Thank you for watching. We publish amazing Reddit stories every day. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe to keep the dog smiling.